Hello friends, welcome back to another week of meals video. If you are new here, welcome. The weather is starting to get warmer, so in this video I'm going to share several recipes that can be done on the grill. Our family loves to grill all summer long, so that is something we are looking forward to. I'm also going to be sharing a couple recipes that you can just pop in the oven very quick or that you can put in the crock pot. These are all very family-friendly recipes and they are great on any budget. I get a lot of requests for the recipe for my copycat Popeyes chicken, so I know I've made it a couple of times on my channel, but I'm just going to do like a refresher thing and share again how I make it. The blackened chicken that you get from Popeyes, I don't know exactly how they make it, but the recipe originally that I followed, they cook it on the stove in like a cast iron, which you could do, and they claim that that was what made it blackened. I like grilling it. I feel like it has a really great flavor, and I just like the process. The process is a little easier, I guess. So that is how I do it. It's basically just chicken. You season it really well in a bunch of spices. You throw it on the grill until it's done, and then I keep it in the fridge for a couple days during the week, and I usually eat it for lunches. Sometimes my husband and I will have it for dinner, but it is a really good recipe to have like a grab and go type of thing. So I love having this available, and it's delicious. So anyway, I wanted to share again how I make it. Now the original recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of oil, and I think that's because it's in a cast iron pan. So I don't use the oil since I put it on the grill. That's the only thing I really omit. There are a couple seasonings like cayenne that I don't do as much of, just because, you know, sometimes it can be a little too spicy. So measure with your heart, but for the most part I follow it and it turns out really good. So first you do, let's see, a teaspoon of salt. And I usually will, you can sprinkle it all over the chicken. I like putting it all in one bowl and then kind of giving a really good mix with my hands, rubbing it all in and making sure everything's coated. So I do kind of suggest that, but if you're not wanting to touch the chicken and you're wanting just to sprinkle it on the meat, you can lay it all flat and do it that way too. So a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper. I don't usually listen to that because I do love pepper. So I'll add a little bit more generally. I'm almost out here actually. That was about half actually. Okay. Let's see. I have it all written down in my book. If you've followed for a while, I write everything down in this book, all my recipes at least, and that way my kids or whoever has the book, they can eventually have it one day and have all my recipes. So I like writing them all down, and it's also good to have something to follow other than my phone. Okay. Now it says 1.5 teaspoon of cayenne. I feel like that's really spicy, and I'm one that actually likes spice. So I only usually do about half a teaspoon of cayenne, and that seems like a good amount. It adds a little bit of a kick, but it's not spicy. So I feel like half a teaspoon is good. Again, measure with your heart if you like it really spicy. I know the first time I made it, I think I used a full teaspoon, maybe the 1.5, and it was too spicy for my kids. Okay, so half a teaspoon of thyme. I do not do that either because I'm just not a huge fan of it. So I do maybe 1/4 of a teaspoon. I just do a little sprinkle. Half a teaspoon of oregano. I think I go a little light with that, but for the most part. It's about half a teaspoon. The onion powder is 1 tablespoon. Oh, I have just under that. I didn't realize I was out. Okay, so 1 tablespoon of onion powder, 1 tablespoon of paprika. And when I make it, I feel like people see the color of it and they're like, oh wow, that has a lot of cayenne. It's paprika and it's not spicy. The garlic is also 1 tablespoon. I'm gonna add a little bit less because I also wanna add some garlic. So I'm gonna do like 3/4 and then, you know, a little garlic too. And then that is everything. So I'm gonna give it a good mix and then we'll go throw it on the grill. You can also let this marinate for a couple of hours. That's usually what I do actually, but I just don't have the time today. Go figure. I feel like that's the story of my life every time I'm making a recipe. But I'm gonna throw it right on the grill. However, like I said, if you want to marinate it in the fridge for a couple of hours all day, it's just as good. So okay, let me wash my hands and then I'll show you kind of what it looks like coated. Here is how coated the chicken usually is. So I like to get in there with my hands just to make sure it's fully coated and everything, you know, got all the seasoning. All right, let's go throw this on the grill. While the chicken is on the grill, let's make some potato pancakes. These are probably just gonna be for the kids, so I'm gonna make them cheesy and all that goodness. So first I'm gonna chop up an onion really small. It says to grate it, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm just going to cut it up super, super small. My kids don't mind onions, so it'll be fine. If your kids don't like onions or you don't like onions, you can grate them, or you can not do these and maybe do green onions. I'm sure that would be really good too. But my kids don't mind them, so I'm going to cut them pretty small still. Instead of using mashed potatoes, I'm going to use some hash browns that I had on hand, about 4 potatoes worth. And if they're really wet, you're gonna want to kind of get as much of the liquid out as you can. Mine aren't that bad, so. I always overdo it with potatoes. It's like pasta. Okay, so I got the potatoes in there. I'm gonna put the onions in. And it was just a small onion, chopped up really small. Then 3 eggs. I'm gonna add in some salt and pepper too. Eyes are burning from the onions. start with 4 tablespoons of flour, but if it is like still too liquidy and not a good consistency, then you'll want to add more. So I'm gonna start with 4 tablespoons. I'll leave it out just in case. You'll give this a good stir. Oh yeah, I'm also gonna add some cheese. I'm gonna do just cheddar, that's what I have on hand. I'm gonna do about a half a cup of cheddar. Mix that in. You could also add other seasonings too if you're wanting garlic or anything like that. You could add that in. I'm gonna keep it really simple since it's just a lunch for the kids. Okay, I'm gonna add about another tablespoon-ish of flour. I might need more than that. I think 1 more tablespoon will do. I'm gonna get a pan going on the stove with some olive oil in it, and then we'll form them into patties and cook them in olive oil.
And here is how they all turned out. My kids like to dip them in ketchup, but I do know people that like to put like a scoop of sour cream on top with some green onions. They can be made so many different ways. You can even include bacon. I mean, these are so versatile, so you can make them really so many different ways. The chicken is now finishing up on the grill, so I'm going to check it with my handy dandy meat thermometer. This is something that I got at Walmart a couple years ago, and it was only like $3, but it has been a complete lifesaver. My husband is not the greatest cook. He loves to grill, and he's really good at grilling too, but for the longest time he didn't know how to tell when meat was done on the grill, so he would always come and get me to check the food that was on the grill to tell if it was done. So we ended up getting this meat thermometer a couple years ago, and it has been great. It was the tiniest little investment, but it has made quite the impact.
There is one more recipe that I want to make today, and it is an oatmeal cookie, iced oatmeal cookie cake. So I'm gonna throw that together real quick, and we'll have that for dessert tonight. Let me get some stuff out of the way so you can see a little better. Don't forget to drink your water. Okay. Okay, so first, half a cup of butter melted and slightly cooled. 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. And one part of this recipe that I did not think about, this was kind of a spur of the moment recipe. The icing you need powdered sugar for, and I don't have any. So for the first time, I'm going to try making powdered sugar. I looked up how you can do it. Apparently it's very easy. I have never done it before. So after we get the cake all put together, we're going to try making powdered sugar for the first time so we can have it for our icing on top of it. So we need a teaspoon of vanilla, a teaspoon of cinnamon, it says 1 egg, I'm gonna go ahead and start mixing that. Half a teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 cup of oats. Where are they? Then it says a cup plus 2 tablespoons of flour. This is 1/2 cup increments here. Plus 2 tablespoons. Oh, and then 1 tablespoon of honey. It said you could also do a tablespoon of molasses if you don't have honey, or, you know, if you rather, but I don't have any molasses, so I'm using honey. I'm gonna mix it all together, and then I believe that is it, and we'll put it in a baking dish. Yep, that is it. We'll mix it, put it in a baking dish, and bake it at 350 until it's done. I'm going to spread the cake out in this pie pan. It is greased already. You're supposed to use an 8x8 pan. However, I just felt like that was so tiny, and I feel like, I don't know. I felt like this was bigger and it's gonna be a bigger cake. So I did it in a pie pan, and I just want to warn you that the dough is incredible. I just took it out and was letting my kids try it before I put it in the oven, and I had to take it away because it is so good, and they were like, can I have another? Can I have another? So I'm just going to, as best as I can, smooth it into this pan and then pop it in the oven. So Google says that powdered sugar is about equivalent to a cup of granulated sugar in the blender with a tablespoon of cornstarch. And you mix that up until a fine powder. So we are going to try that. That is a cup of sugar and a tablespoon of cornstarch. All right, let's give it a go. All right, let's test it. Ooh. Yep. We made powdered sugar. That is crazy. And they're so easy. Okay. So now let's make the icing that goes over top. Okay. So for the icing, it's just a normal, simple icing. Half a cup of powdered sugar. I still cannot get over how easy that was. I'm gonna have to make powdered sugar all the time now. I should have put it in a bowl or something. Okay. Half a cup of powdered sugar. 1 to 2 tablespoons, oh no, quarter of a teaspoon vanilla. And then 1 to 2 tablespoons of milk. And I had to bust out my spooky rubber spatula because no idea where my other one is. I'm going to add a little bit more powdered sugar because I feel like it's a little too liquidy. Okay, and then once you get the consistency that you're wanting, I'm gonna let it sit for a couple minutes too while I finish up the cake and let it cool down before we put the topping in. I just pulled the cake out of the oven. I'm trying to get a good shot. It said to not over bake because it can turn out dry. So it said when the outside is set, which this is, and it turns like a brown, a golden brown, then that is when it's done. And then to cool it on a wire rack for about 2 hours before you put the icing on. So you're wanting this to be cool to the touch before you put the icing on. So I have it on a wire rack. I'm going to go ahead and cool it down for the next 2 hours, and I'll see you back here when we go to ice it.
The picture in the recipe showed them just drizzling it on the cookie. However, it wasn't really working out, so I ended up just kind of putting almost all of it on top. I didn't use all of the icing, but a good amount of it, and then I barely let it sit at all. I have zero patience, and my kids were dying to try this, so I cut into it pretty quickly. But if you do wait, the icing does set and it hardens, and it is just like one of those oatmeal cookies. This recipe though was delicious. My kids have already ate it all and are requesting another one of these cakes. I'm going to be moving on to the next recipe though, and this is going to be French onion meatballs. I'll also make mashed potatoes and serve it with a vegetable.
I bought these meatballs at the store, and they were the price of the larger bag that I usually buy, so I ended up getting these, not even really paying attention, but hold on, let me open it so you can see. There is like hardly any in here, and this is not going to feed my entire family. So, like less than half a bag. So I got these, and I'm going to just use some homemade meatballs that I had made previously and froze. So I'm gonna combine them, and we're gonna call that good enough. So that's what I'm gonna do. This is also supposed to be a crock pot meal, but if you know me, I can't seem to get my life together enough lately to actually make a crock pot meal at a reasonable time. So it is already after 2:30. It's almost 3 p.m. So I'm going to just put these in a casserole dish and put them into the oven. And again, that we're gonna just call it good. Probably should have thawed these a little. They're in chunks. It will be fine. They'll cook and separate, I'm sure. So, anyway, those meatballs, and then I'm going to do those, and that should be plenty. I'm gonna serve them with potatoes also. So these are French onion meatballs, I think is what they were called. I'm going to so you just put the meatballs in here or in the crock pot, depending on what you do. It's the same process, just obviously the crock pot would be an all day thing, and this is a last minute supper because, you know, I can't figure it out lately, it seems. I have a pretty small, I would say medium to small size onion that I sliced up into thin slices. I'm going to just kind of top all the meatballs with that. And then the recipe called for 1 can of the French onion soup. I got 2 because I don't know, I felt like 1 was not enough. So, which I feel like it's still not. So I got 2 cans of the French onion. And then I also have French onion soup mix that I'm going to put over top. So again, if you're putting this in the crock pot, it's the same thing. You'll just do the meatballs, the onions, maybe put this on before, and then the French onion soup. I'm going to put a little bit of water on this and maybe mix it just slightly, and then I'm gonna put it in the oven. And then once it's all done, you'll take it out and you're gonna put cheese on it. I bought, let me see what kind I bought, hold on. So I bought Gruyere cheese. It said you could also use Swiss. I do not like Swiss cheese though, so I bought this. Anyway, so I'm going to I'll shred this and put it over the top. And then when this is all done in a couple of hours, I'm gonna bake it low and slow. So I'll put this on the top after it's done, and then probably broil it for a couple more minutes after that to get that nice little broiled effect on it. But I'm gonna pour a little bit of water on this because it's just not as juicy as I'm looking for. I'm looking for more of a gravy because I am gonna make mashed potatoes, excuse me. And so I'm wanting more of a gravy for that. So I'm gonna add a little bit of water, mix it up a little bit, and then put it in the oven. This recipe also had like 10 out of 10 reviews. So I have really high hopes for this. Okay, I'm gonna put it in the oven.
Okay, so just a couple of things that I noticed from this recipe while I'm shredding cheese. If you are cooking it in the crock pot, I would suggest adding more of the French onion soup than I did, maybe 3, possibly 4 cans. Or if you're not wanting to do that, you could do like a beef broth. It was just enough, but in the baking dish that I did, but I would almost want more because there wasn't quite enough gravy. The meatballs ended up kind of absorbing some of the juice, and there wasn't really quite enough for gravy. It was overall, this probably was a 10 out of 10 meal. This is a really great meal if you don't have a lot of time, you want to just throw it in the crock pot before work, or if you have no time and you put it into a baking dish like I did. It was a wonderful meal. My daughter does not like meatballs, but she actually tried this and liked this whole recipe. She said I did a very good job, so that's a lot coming from a 13-year-old, I feel like. So anyway, it was a wonderful recipe, but it didn't seem like it had quite enough liquid, especially if you're cooking it in the crock pot. So that is something I would suggest doing if you plan on making this. For our next meal, I'm going to be smoking one of these pork roasts. I've never smoked one of these before. I always just cook it in the oven. But I came across an article a while ago and they smoked one of these, so I want to try that. I do apologize, it might be a little loud because I have the grill going, I'm right next to it. But we are going to be trying an Asiago peppercorn, and I just got one of these. So it was $5.99 for a pound and a half. One of these is generally enough-ish for my family of 6 because my younger 2 boys, they still eat really small portions of meat. So I can kind of get away with just one of these for our family, but I will make probably some rice and a big salad to go with it. Anyway, I'm going to throw this on the grill and get it going. I have the grill at, let's see, it's about 250, so I'm gonna put that on. I might make some minor adjustments, but usually 250 is pretty good, and we'll kind of monitor it. Like I said, it's only about it's a pound and a half, so it probably is not going to take very long. This pork took no time at all to cook, and I did end up lowering the temperature just slightly as I was monitoring it, but it cooked a little bit over an hour, a little less than 2 hours, and it was still very juicy, wasn't dried out or anything like that. I'm moving on to making rice to go with our pork. I am making a fried rice today, and it's a little different than the one I usually make on my channel. It has a little bit more in depth, like the veggies and stuff like that. So I will put the recipe down below in the description box if you would like to try making it yourself. This is probably one of my kids' favorite things. This is actually, I think, one of my daughter's favorite foods. So I haven't made it in a while. I've just been a little bit lazier with making rice lately, but this was a good treat to have after a while of not making it. I'm doing a quick taste test and letting you know that it turned out great. And this is the pork. It is about ready to come off the grill, so I'm going to take it off the grill and slice it up. I also did make a big salad for the side, and really I just threw a bunch of stuff in. It's kind of like right before you need to go and get groceries, and so you just have a weird, like odd amount of ingredients to go into things. So that's kind of how the salad went. We had lettuce, there was some carrots, there was some homemade pico de gallo. I did a little bit of avocado. I had about half a can of black beans. We did the slightest amount of ranch. I feel like ranch and pico de gallo as a dressing is a phenomenal flavor. So we threw all that together and made a big salad, had the rice and the pork, and it was the perfect summertime meal. This is something that I'm going to be adding into our rotation over the summer for sure. This is the last recipe for today's video, and if you saw my Monday video, you probably have already seen this recipe. However, I did not actually give you the recipe. I just kind of showed me making it on Monday's video. So if you are looking for that recipe, you can find it down below in the description box, and I'm just going to kind of walk you through it again. I came across a recipe for a white Alabama sauce smoked chicken. It's kind of a mouthful. And we were wanting to do something kind of like an early dinner, something special for Kyle's birthday. His birthday was during the week, so we were wanting to do it over the weekend while he was home, and we thought that this recipe would be a perfect thing to try. Now, this is the first time that we have ever spatchcocked a chicken, and I'm not quite sure if this is exactly the term for it. I know that spatchcocking, you kind of take out the backbone and you cook it, I think, with the breastbone intact. I haven't done that either, so this is our very first time. But we are splitting the chicken, so I'm not sure if that's what it's called. I was having trouble getting through the breastbone, and so I called my husband over to see if he could do it, and he couldn't either. And off camera, I ended up just pressing on it, and it cracked, and it was like the simplest thing. So I don't know if that's how you're supposed to do it, but that's how we did it, and it was very easy from that point. So now I am heavily seasoning the chicken, and I think it's just with like a chicken rub that I got at Walmart, couple other seasonings, and then we're gonna throw it on the grill to cook low and slow. I think the smoker was set for 250, I want to say, and it took a couple of hours to completely smoke it through. Now, I am going to make this chicken like this probably for the rest of my life. It is phenomenal how much it just cooks so evenly, and it's so juicy. I know that's why a lot of people will cook a chicken like either upside down or they'll spatchcock it, and so it's kind of even. It is such a phenomenal flavor. So if you have not tried that, like I hadn't, this is the very first time that we're trying it, I highly suggest it because it is so juicy and it cooks extremely evenly. It was really wonderful, and I'm probably for the rest of my life going to be making chicken this way. But after it cooked for a couple of hours, we then took it off the grill since it was all done, and I'm going to go ahead and make the white Alabama sauce for it. The recipe that I saw, they like dunked the entire chicken into that, and I was a little unsure about that, so I did not dunk the entire chicken in. I just drizzled it on top at the very end. But this was the first time that I'm also making this Alabama white sauce, and I think it's supposed to be similar to a barbecue sauce. We have never had it before. I do have to note, however, that it was very vinegary. So unless that's something you like, and I'm not sure if that's like how Alabama white sauce is, like I said, this is the first time we're trying it, but it had so much apple cider vinegar. So I would suggest starting with a quarter of a cup and kind of just working your way up, because it calls for a cup and a half, and I did not even add that. I added, I want to say, 1 cup, and I had to doctor it afterwards because it was just too overpowering. So I added in more mayo, more mustard, more horseradish. I think I added a little bit of everything except for the vinegar, to kind of mellow it out some. Again, I don't know if that's how it's supposed to be, but that was something that we don't necessarily enjoy, so I did doctor it up some. I will put the original recipe down below, and you can kind of make those adjustments however you're wanting to do it, just based on how it was done. So just know that I would start with the vinegar at 1/4 cup and just work your way up until you get to a point where you actually enjoy the amount that's in it. But that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching another weekly meal video. I really do appreciate you. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.